Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you had a good weekend. I had a very interesting weekend. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But for the weather report, which I'm not even sure why I continue to do this, but I do, it is rainy today. It feels like the fall rain season is already set in, but it's still August and should be our summer weather. But it's already cooled off quite a bit down here where we live and rainy most days. So interesting, but I'm sure we're going to have another warm period um, before this is all over. As we finished up our series on Romans, chapter 8, the greatest chapter in the Bible, we finished with this thought based on the end of the chapter where Paul says, what shall we do about this with all this? And his final conclusion is to hold on to the fact that nothing can separate us from the love of God. And Friday, we looked at what does that mean in a practical way in our lives. So I challenge you to go out and do loving acts towards other people. If you want to experience the love of God, show the love of God. And I finished with a challenge to love an enemy somewhere along the line. Ask God to bring somebody along that you really don't want to love. Funny thing happens. Saturday, Karen and Megan and I go to IKEA. We thought we were going to go buy a sofa while we were there, but we didn't. That's beside the point. We drove separate vehicles because we needed one vehicle just to put the sofa into, and then Megan and Karen drove in a separate car. So we're in the parking lot underneath IKEA. If you ever been to the IKEA down in Coquitlam, we're in the underground parking. Karen is turning into a parking spot on the left. There's an empty spot on this side, and I have my turn signal on, and I'm waiting. I'm waiting there. All the way at the very end of the row, somebody turns down while I'm waiting. And as Karen clears, I start to go forward, and this person dashes in and takes the spot right in front of me while my turn signal's on. I put my high beams on, clicked them to let them know I was already annoyed. There's a parking spot up a ways. I go up and I park. The people are walking in, and I called down to Karen. I said, "Did you see that rude person?" I was really, I don't know why it bothered me so much, but it really bothered me. It shouldn't have. So anyway, we finally get inside. The first thing we do is we go to get breakfast in IKEA, and we get up in the line for IKEA, and I go to explain to Megan uh, and Karen about what just happened in a little more detail. Who's in line right in front of us? The people. The people are right in line in front of it, and the Lord reminded me of what I had shared in the podcast on Friday. Love your enemies. My goodness. Do you think this is easy for me to do this? The Lord makes me do what I talk to you about. And so, okay, Lord, I will love my enemy. And I won't say anything further because I was about to let them know when I thought of their little parking escapade. But I smiled and I was nice. Megan goes off and gets us a table. You ever been in IKEA's restaurant? There's a fair bit of tables. They're all over the place. It was not full. Where do the people go and sit? Almost right next to Megan. Now I have to eat breakfast with them. I'm telling you, you can't make this stuff up. If you're serious about wanting to grow in the Word and in the Lord, He's going to bring situations into your life so that you can put it to work and grow in your faith and in your experience with Him, even if it's a little thing like some selfish person grabbing the parking spot right in front of you, which at the end of the day is not a big deal. But I don't know why. I think it's because of the drive-in. It's always so whatever. But anyway, take heart. We're launching from that series that was largely focused on the love of God as found in Jesus Christ, his son, and what he did for us on the cross, being buried in the grave, being risen to new life on the third day, and he returned to heaven. That whole package was a grand expression of God's love for us. We're entering a new series that I'm calling Love and Hate. And we want to explore a number of questions. in this new series, and I hope you hang in there with us. Uh, I personally don't ever remember any preacher, maybe I should have second thoughts about doing this, but any preacher doing a series on hate. But we're going to do one. It's called Love and Hate, but it's really on hate. And we're going to ask and explore questions like, does God hate? If God hates, what does he hate? Does God ever hate people? You've heard people say, love the sinner, but hate the sin. Is that a biblical idea at all? Is that the way God functions? If God hates, spoiler alert, the Bible kind of indicates that he does. If God hates, why is it that we're told, and if God hates his enemies, why are we told to love our enemies? If God is allowed to hate his enemies, how come we can't hate our enemies? And we can't. There's good reason for that. Does God sometimes both love and hate a person at the same time? Big questions. We're going to get into it. We're just going to we're going to dip our toes in the edge of the pool this morning as we begin this series. The series begins in Proverbs chapter 6. And you're going to quickly see that, yes, God does hate. It is a part of who he is. And there's a sense in which philosophically you cannot have hate. I mean, you cannot have love if you don't have hate on the other side. I remember one time many years ago when Ryan was quite young. I think he was like around 7, 8 years old at best. And I had cut out a newspaper article and left it sitting out um, to file later. And the headlines was about how the United Church had come to a position that hell did not exist. And Ryan looked at that and he said, well, if you don't have hell, you can't have heaven. And he was exactly right. I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting for a 7-year-old or whatever age he was at. And the same thing is true. You cannot have love if you don't have hate. What does all that mean for us? I have a book on this side called The Testaments of Love, and it explores uh, the theme of love all through the Bible, both in the Old and New Testament. Sometimes we tend to think of the New Testament as the testament of love, and the Old Testament as the testament of judgment and laws and all that. But the truth is, um, Old Testament is filled with God's love, just as New Testament, because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So I have that book over there. Let's know over there, the Testaments of Love. On this side, I have a book that I've always appreciated by a theologian called D.A. Carson called the difficult doctrine of the love of God, because the love of God is not so simple as we try to make it. So today we have a minute and a half left, but I told you we're only dipping our toes in the edge of the swimming pool of this topic this morning. Let's take a look at our verses today. We're going to be in this for a little bit because we want to explore this, and then we're going to go off into other verses in the coming weeks in the Bible that address this. But this is the one that got me thinking, and I don't know why, other than the Lord brought it to my mind. These verses coming out of Romans chapter 8 on God's tremendous love for us. But does the Lord hate? The quick answer is yes, absolutely, he does. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable or an abomination to him. Now, it's going to list the 7. I want you to know it's not 6 things that he hates and the 7th is even worse. It's basically a way of saying God hates all 7 of these things. You can't get away from that. God's hating all 7 of these things. The reality is, as we look at other uh, scripture references in the coming days, God not only hates these qualities in a person, it turns out he hates these people. That's a rough thing to say. That's a hard thing to say, but you have to remember always to take God in the complete picture of God is also a loving God. Yes, he's a God of judgment, but he's also the God of mercy. Yes, he will visit the sins of the father on 5 generations, but he will show his mercy to thousands of generations. 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, that's pride, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil. By the way, he's describing our modern society. A false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. The first thing we need to establish, and this might be challenging for you, is that God is not only a God of love, God is also a God of hate. But he knows how to do hate perfectly. And he knows how to do hate in a way that he can also show love and mercy to the sinner, which is where we will end up at the end of the series. But between now and then, hold on, because it's going to be a rough ride. So anyway, I hope you have a good couple of days. Look forward to, Lord willing, seeing you on Wednesday. Hopefully on Friday. Friday we are off, doing a little bit of travel with friends, but I'm going to try to pre-record a podcast for Friday. If not, I'll be back sometime at the beginning of the week. But Lord willing, between now and then, hope you have a good couple of days.